All right, so you know that whole go to school, get a job, work your tail off,
Uh-huh.
save every penny, get rid of all your debt,
Right.
and invest in the stock market long term.
Yeah.
Like, we've all heard that, right?
We've all been told that. There's like the financial gospel.
Yeah, in a perfect world, it sounds like pretty responsible.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, does that even make sense anymore? Like, when
Yeah.
governments are printing trillions of dollars and the gap between the super rich and everyone else just seems to get wider.
Yeah, it feels like the rules of the game have fundamentally changed.
Exactly. And honestly, that's precisely what we're diving into today.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah. We're going to break down these contrasting mindsets of the rich versus the poor.
Okay.
And our main source material is this super thought-provoking YouTube video. It's called Mentalidad de Ricos versus Pobres, and it's this powerful compilation from Motiversity on Espanol.
Oh, I've seen that one. It's a good one. It really gets you thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
And it highlights some, like, really startling differences in how these groups view their money and their financial lives.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, it's not just about being rich or poor.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all kind of have a little bit of both those mindsets in us.
No, for sure.
Like we all have that part of us that wants to play it safe.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the poor person mentality.
Like clinging to security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's that part of us that's striving for comfort and stability.
Mhm.
That's maybe more the middle class mindset.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's that aspirational rich person inside all of us that's like, I want financial freedom.
Right. And those different voices, those different mindsets can really pull us in different directions.
Absolutely. Especially when we're trying to make those big financial decisions.
Yeah.
And to give even more context to all of this, we're also going to bring in insights from some real heavy hitters in the worlds of business and finance. Folks like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Mark Cuban.
Love Mark Cuban.
Yeah. And also the legendary investor Ray Dalio.
Oh, he's got some incredible insights. Like he's seen it all, you know?
Yeah, they've all been there and done that and kind of rewritten the rules along the way, which is what makes their perspective so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So your mission, if you choose to accept it, and ours for this deep dive, is to really extract some actionable insights, you know, like things you can actually use in your own life.
Yep.
We want you to be able to look at how you create wealth, how you view debt, how you deal with taxes, like through a totally different lens. And we want you to really get how crucial your own mindset is in all of this.
Oh, and mindset is everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you don't believe you can do something, you're probably right.
So true. So let's jump right in, okay?
Let's do it.
So one of the first really thought-provoking ideas that grabbed me from the video was this whole concept of the employee mindset versus the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So the speaker's rich dad straight up refused to pay his son a regular salary. Like, he saw it almost as a trap.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that?
You know, it's so interesting because what the rich dad was trying to do was cultivate a different way of thinking, right? He was trying to get his son to think like an entrepreneur, not like an employee.
Okay.
So it wasn't necessarily that a salary was like evil,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more about like, if you get too comfortable relying on that paycheck, it can actually limit your potential.
So it's about not being dependent on that regular income.
Exactly, like not needing a paycheck.
Versus being like enslaved by a salary.
Right, because when you're dependent on that paycheck, it can dictate your choices, you know?
You're trading your time for money, basically.
Yeah, and one of the things the video talks about is the freedom that comes with that entrepreneurial mindset.
Right.
Like if one government doesn't value your skills, you can go somewhere else where they do.
Oh, so it's about having more options.
Yeah, exactly. It's about having a global perspective, you know, not being limited by borders or like one specific job market.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's so different from what the poor dad in the video believed, right?
Oh, totally. Remember, he was a government employee,
Mm-hmm.
and he truly believed that people deserved a fair wage for their work.
Yeah, which is a totally valid perspective.
Right.
But it highlights a fundamental difference in how they looked at creating and exchanging value.
Exactly. And
Yep.
this really leads us to that crucial leap into entrepreneurship. You know, the speaker talks about getting his last paycheck, that bonus from Xerox, and it wasn't all celebration, was it?
Oh, no. Like, there was a lot of fear mixed in with that excitement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's that initial rush of woohoo bonus, but then it's like, wait a minute, that's it. That's the last one?
The safety net's gone.
Gone. And then you've got that scene with his colleague, John, who basically tells him he's going to fail and come crawling back.
Ooh, that's gotta sting.
Right. And it really highlights the mental toughness you need to be an entrepreneur.
Like, the people around you aren't always going to be supportive.
Not always.
Yeah.
And you've got to be strong enough to drown out that negativity. And the speaker's response, that you failed and came back, but I will fail and never return.
That's powerful.
That's pure entrepreneurial grit right there.
So it's like that burn the boats mentality. There's no going back.
Yeah, exactly. And the video makes this really interesting point. It says that failure itself, like actually failing, can be the thing that makes you a true entrepreneur.
It's like trial by fire.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like when that guaranteed income disappears, you're suddenly forced to become resourceful and innovative. You have to figure it out.
It's sink or swim.
Right. And that's when you really discover what you're made of.
Yeah. He even talks about becoming hungrier and smarter when you're in that situation.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The pressure can either crush you or it can make you stronger.
Okay, so moving on, another big theme in the video is this idea of having a global vision, a global perspective, and understanding that good times and bad times are kind of intertwined, right?
Right. Like economies go through cycles.
Exactly. So are we talking about being prepared for whatever's coming next?
Yeah, exactly. And the analogy he uses is so good.
Which one?
The one about the milk carton.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
He says, we're so careful about checking the expiration date on a milk carton,
Right.
but we don't do the same with our own ideas. Like we cling to outdated beliefs that might not serve us anymore.
Oh, so it's about updating our mental software.
Exactly. Because just because something worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work in the future.
Yeah, complacency can be dangerous, especially in a world that's changing so fast.
Definitely. So we need to be constantly learning and adapting.
Okay, so this next point, this really challenged some of my own ingrained beliefs about money,
What's that?
The speaker actually suggests taking on more debt.
More debt.
Yeah. But strategically, how does that even work? Like, isn't the goal to get out of debt?
So this is where it gets really interesting. He's not saying, go rack up a bunch of credit card debt. He's talking about leveraging debt as a tool to create wealth, like refinancing at lower interest rates.
Okay, so it's not just about blindly getting rid of all debt.
Right. It's about understanding how debt works and making it work for you, not against you.
So it's like using debt to create more income.
Exactly. And this really ties into the next point he makes, which is about how debt and taxes actually often benefit the rich while hurting the poor and the middle class.
So how does that work?
So one of the key things he talks about is how different types of income are taxed. Like if you earn a salary, that income is often taxed at a much higher rate.
Okay.
But if you earn a business or invest in real estate, you can actually structure your finances to pay less taxes.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and he gives this example comparing a doctor who earns $1 million a year to an entrepreneur who also earns $1 million, but through their business.
And the entrepreneur pays way less in taxes.
Exactly. And this is because the rich don't typically work for money.
Okay.
They own assets that produce income.
So it's not just about how much you earn, but how you earn it.
Right. And the system is kind of set up to favor those who understand this.
And then this is where that whole thing about printing money comes back into play, right?
Yes.
Because if the government keeps printing money, that can actually devalue your savings.
Exactly. It makes your money worth less over time.
So what can people do to protect themselves?
He talks a lot about investing in assets that hold their value, things like real estate, precious metals, even businesses.
So instead of just saving cash, you need to find ways to make your money grow.
Exactly. And this really challenges that old financial advice that we were talking about earlier.
The whole go to school, get a job, save your money.
Right, because the world has changed, right? The financial system isn't the same as it was 50 years ago.
Okay, so what does he call this outdated advice?
He calls it obsolete financial dogma.
Okay.
And he points to 1971 as this major turning point, when the U.S. went off the gold standard.
Right, so that's when money basically became debt.
Yeah, and it's led to this situation where we have all this money floating around.
Which can lead to bubbles in things like stocks and real estate.
Right, because people are trying to get rid of cash and put it into something that will hold its value.
So what's the takeaway here?
I think it's that we need to be more critical of the financial advice we're given and really understand how the system works.
Okay, so let's talk about mindset. The video really hammers this home, right? It says entrepreneurship isn't just a job or a business, it's a mentality.
Yes, it's a way of thinking. It's about seeing opportunities where others see problems.
Okay, so it's about more than just starting a business.
Right, because you can be self-employed and still have an employee mindset.
Like you're just working for yourself, but still trading your time for money.
Exactly. A true entrepreneur is building systems and creating value that doesn't require their constant attention.
Okay, so it's about building something that can run without you.
Right. And the video talks about this idea of your internal economy, which is like your mindset, your willpower, your resilience.
Versus the external economy, which is all the stuff happening in the world.
Right. And the point is that if you have a strong internal economy, you're less affected by what's happening outside.
So you're more adaptable.
Yeah, and you're more likely to see opportunities in bad economies because you're not focused on the negativity.
Okay. So how do you build this strong internal economy?
Well, he talks about the importance of controlling your thoughts and emotions,
Okay.
not letting fear and doubt hold you back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about being disciplined and focused, even when you don't feel like it.
Okay, so let's talk about Elon Musk. He's featured a lot in the video, right?
Oh, yeah, he's like a walking example of this entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, and he's got some really interesting views on hard work.
Oh, yeah, he's a big believer in putting in the hours.
Like a lot of hours.
He talks about working 80, 100 hours a week.
Whoa, whoa.
But his point is that if you want to achieve something truly great, you have to be willing to make sacrifices.
So it's about going above and beyond what most people are willing to do.
Exactly. And he also talks about having a clear vision, like knowing what you want to create and why it's important.
And not just creating anything, but creating something of real value to others.
Right. He says you should be constantly evaluating whether what you're building is actually going to make a difference.
And he is also a huge advocate for continuous learning, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. He believes that knowledge and technology are the keys to progress.
And even with all the success, he acknowledges that failure is inevitable.
Especially when you're pushing boundaries and trying to do things that have never been done before.
Like with SpaceX and Tesla.
Right. But he sees failure as an opportunity to learn and improve.
So it's not about avoiding failure, it's about learning from it.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's get into this whole idea of first principles thinking, which Musk talks a lot about. What's that all about?
So it's this concept where you break things down to their most fundamental truths. Like, instead of just doing things the way they've always been done, you question every assumption.
And you build up from there.
Right. You figure out what actually makes sense based on logic and reasoning, not just tradition or what everyone else is doing.
That's a really powerful way to approach problem solving.
It is. And it can lead to some really innovative solutions.
And finally, Musk has this piece of advice that really struck a chord with me. He says to take risks now, when you're younger.
Before you have too many responsibilities.
Right, because when you're older, it's harder to bounce back from failure.
Exactly. And he encourages people to be bold and to do something that they won't regret later on.
I love that. Okay, so let's circle back to the video and the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The speaker talks about how as a kid he was confused why they didn't teach him about money in school.
Yeah, it's strange, right? Like, money is such a big part of our lives, but it's rarely taught in a practical way.
And his dad's explanation was pretty mind-blowing, wasn't it?
Yeah, he basically said that the government doesn't want people to be financially literate.
Whoa. Like, why would that be?
Well, because if people understood money better, they might start questioning the system.
Okay, that's interesting. So what did he do?
Well, his dad suggested he ask his friend Mike's dad about money.
Okay.
Because Mike's dad was an entrepreneur.
So he had that real-world experience.
Exactly. And that's how he ended up getting all these lessons from his rich dad.
Okay, and what was the first thing Rich Dad told him?
He told him he would teach him about money, but he would never pay him a salary.
Whoa, why not?
Because he wanted him to think like an owner, not an employee.
So it was another way of breaking that employee mindset.
Right. And one of the ways Rich Dad taught him about money was through playing Monopoly.
Monopoly.
Yeah, he used it to illustrate basic financial concepts, like buying assets that produce income.
Oh, like the 4 greenhouses and the Red Hotel.
Exactly. And in real life, Rich Dad was doing the same thing.
Oh, how so?
He was buying properties in Waikiki and eventually building a big hotel.
So he was playing Monopoly in the real world.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the video really stresses the power of mindset, right?
Yeah. It says poverty can start with an attitude, not just a lack of money.
Right. It's like if you believe you're poor, you're going to act in ways that keep you poor.
So your beliefs about money can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And the school system doesn't help because it mostly focuses on training people to be employees.
Right. Not on how to manage money or build wealth.
And that's why the poor dad in the story, even though he had a PhD, struggled financially.
Because he never learned those practical money skills.
Right. He was stuck in that employee mindset.
Okay, so the video makes this distinction between real teachers and false teachers. What's the difference?
A real teacher is someone who actually does what they teach.
Okay.
So like a successful investor teaching about investing.
Versus someone who just talks about it but doesn't actually do it.
Exactly. And the mindsets are totally different.
Like how so?
Well, the poor say, I can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
But the rich ask, how can I afford it?
So it's about finding a way to make it happen.
Right. It's about being resourceful and creative.
Okay, and the video also talks about high achievers like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and their incredible self-esteem.
Yeah, they believe in themselves, and they're not afraid to go after what they want.
And they surround themselves with other high achievers.
Right. It's like they create this environment of success.
So if you want to be successful, you need to surround yourself with people who are already there.
Exactly. And find mentors who can guide you.
And the video challenges this idea that you can be anything you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about finding your passion and focusing on that.
Right, because when you're passionate about something, you're more likely to put in the hard work.
And it talks about using affirmations and visualizing success.
Which can be really powerful tools for changing your mindset.
Okay, so the conversation shifts to navigating economic downturns.
Mm-hmm.
And the speaker doesn't sugarcoat things, you know? He says we're in an unknown world right now.
Right. And that it could be a really dangerous time, especially for the average person.
So why is it dangerous?
Well, he talks about the global economy being more interconnected than ever before.
Okay.
So if one country goes down, it can take everyone else with it.
Oh, so it's like a domino effect.
Yeah. And he's also really concerned about the amount of debt that countries have
Okay.
and the fact that governments keep printing more and more money.
Which can lead to inflation and make your money worth less.
Exactly. So he predicts that we could be headed for a global depression.
Whoa, that's a scary thought.
It is. But he also says that he's excited about the opportunities that come with downturns
How so?
because he knows that when things are bad, there are often great deals to be had.
Okay, so it's about being able to see the opportunities when others are panicking.
Right. And he talks about this concept of metamorphosis, like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. He says that we all need to go through this financial metamorphosis.
So what does that look like?
It's about evolving and adapting to the new economic reality.
Okay.
It's about shifting from an employee mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset.
And it's about taking control of your own financial future.
Exactly. He says that instead of looking for job security, we should be looking for meaningful work.
Oh.
And instead of waiting for a bailout, we should be creating our own opportunities.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Right. And he talks about the importance of understanding different types of income,
Okay.
like earned income, portfolio income, and passive income.
So what's the difference?
Well, earned income is what you get from a job.
Okay.
Portfolio income is from investments, like stocks and bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And passive income is money that comes in without you having to work for it.
Oh, that's the dream.
Right. And the rich focus on building passive income streams
Okay, like how?
through things like real estate, businesses, royalties.
And the advantage of passive income is that it's often taxed differently.
Yeah, you can often pay way less taxes on passive income.
So how do you learn about all this stuff?
He talks about the importance of financial education, not just the stuff they teach you in school.
So like reading books, taking courses.
Yeah, and finding mentors who can teach you the real world stuff.
Okay, makes sense. Now, the video also talks a lot about gratitude and internal control. And he tells this really inspiring story about being grateful even when things were tough.
It's about focusing on what you have, not what you don't have.
Yeah, and he says that happiness is a moving target if you tie it to external achievements.
Right. So it's about finding contentment from within.
And he talks about the importance of building good habits and routines.
And linking those standards to your personal values.
So it's about having a strong why.
Exactly. And he talks about making commitments to yourself and keeping those promises.
Like, how does that help?
It builds self-confidence and self-trust.
Okay, so it's about being reliable to yourself.
Yeah, and it also helps you develop discipline.
And he gives this advice about focusing on what you've done well, not just your mistakes.
Right. It's about celebrating your successes no matter how small.
And it's about being grateful for the opportunities you have.
Exactly. Gratitude can really change your perspective.
Okay, so the video then dives into this concept of identity.
Mm-hmm.
It says that your identity is like the governor of your life.
It's like the set point of your thermostat.
Okay.
It determines your level of success and happiness.
So if you want to change your life, you need to change your identity.
Exactly. And he says that you'll get from life what you tolerate.
So if you're tolerating mediocrity, that's what you'll get.
Right. But if you raise your standards, you'll attract better things into your life.
And he talks about the importance of not being afraid to feel the pain of not being where you want to be.
Yeah, like using that discomfort as motivation.
And he says that if someone else can do it, you can too.
It's about finding role models and learning from their example.
Okay, so the video shifts to this idea of abundance and taking action.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes this interesting observation about how the most successful people are often loners.
Yeah, because they're operating at a different level.
Like they're playing a different game.
Right. And he talks about shifting your focus from saving to earning.
Okay.
Because there's an abundance of money out there. It's just about tapping into it.
So it's about creating wealth, not just hoarding it.
Exactly. And he sets these really ambitious financial goals.
Like what?
Like aiming to be in the top 1% of earners globally.
Oh, that's bold.
It is. But it's about thinking big and not settling for mediocrity.
And he stresses the importance of critical thinking and being willing to challenge the status quo.
And not being afraid to be unpopular.
Because the best ideas are often the ones that are initially met with resistance.
Right. And he talks about using discomfort and challenges as fuel for growth.
So it's about embracing the struggle.
Yeah, because that's where you learn and get stronger.
And he emphasizes the importance of discipline and focusing on results.
And holding yourself accountable for your actions.
Okay, so the conversation moves to creating risk.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that most people are afraid of risk, but that's actually what holds them back.
Right, because if you're not taking risks, you're not growing.
So it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And he talks about this idea of buying revenue.
Okay.
Which is about acquiring businesses that already have a proven track record.
So instead of starting from scratch, you're buying something that's already working.
Exactly. And he talks about the importance of letting others talk during negotiations.
So you can learn more about what they want.
Right. And he gives this advice about using silence strategically.
Okay, like how?
Well, sometimes it's better to just listen and let the other person talk themselves into a corner.
That's interesting. And he also emphasizes the importance of bringing solutions to the table, not just problems.
Right, because no one wants to hear about problems. They want to hear about solutions.
And he talks about the holy grail of investing, which is basically being able to predict the future.
Well, not exactly predict the future, but being able to see opportunities that others miss.
And then he relates that back to business.
Yeah, he says that in business, you often have to bet against the consensus and be right.
Which is risky, but also potentially very rewarding.
Exactly. And he talks about the importance of humility, being willing to admit when you're wrong and change course.
Okay, so now the video talks about the art of disagreement and self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that the most dangerous people are the ones who cling to their wrong opinions.
Yeah, because they're not open to learning and growing.
So it's about being open-minded and willing to change your mind.
Exactly. And it's about being able to disagree with people in a respectful way.
Okay, so not just arguing for the sake of arguing.
Right. It's about finding the best solution, even if it means changing your own mind.
And it stresses the importance of self-awareness.
Knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Okay, so then the video dives into meditation and inner alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that meditation can help you reconcile the different parts of your mind.
The logical part and the emotional part.
Okay.
Because sometimes those parts can be in conflict.
So meditation can help you find inner peace.
And it can also help you overcome those ego barriers and blind spot barriers.
What are those?
They're like mental blocks that prevent you from seeing things clearly.
And he talks about aligning your conscious desires with your subliminal influences.
Right, because if those two things are out of sync, you're going to struggle.
And he says it's important to triangulate with others.
To get feedback and make sure you're not just living in your own little bubble.
Okay, so now the video focuses on productivity and focus.
Mm-hmm.
And the ideal, of course, is when your passion and your work are the same thing.
Right, because then it doesn't feel like work.
And it talks about working effectively with talented people.
Yeah, building a great team is essential for success.
And developing good work habits.
And focusing on delegation.
So it's about being efficient with your time and energy.
Exactly. And it uses this phrase, fight hard or love hard.
What does that mean?
It's about embracing challenges and giving your all to everything you do.
Whether it's work or relationships or anything else that's important to you.
Right. And it talks about seeing challenges as puzzles to be solved.
So instead of getting stressed out, you get excited about figuring things out.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the importance of working harder and learning more than the competition.
Because if you're not constantly improving, you're falling behind.
Right. So now the conversation shifts to understanding failure and competition.
Okay.
And it says that the two main reasons people fail are lack of knowledge and lack of effort.
So you either don't know what you're doing or you're not willing to put in the work.
Right. And it talks about the constant presence of competition in business.
So you always have to be on your toes.
Yeah, you can't get complacent.
And it says that you need to know your business and your customers better than anyone else.
Right. That's how you create a competitive advantage.
And it talks about the importance of continuous learning and adaptation.
Because the world is constantly changing. And if you don't keep up, you'll get left behind.
And it mentions this idea of healthy paranoia.
Which is about being aware of your competitors
Yeah.
and anticipating their moves.
Okay, so the video then addresses the whole debate about education. And it says that regardless of whether you go to college or not, the most important thing is to learn accounting.
Because it's the language of business.
Okay.
And it also stresses the importance of learning foundational skills in